We know that with the Parivartana there is no joking around. We have some conception how it works, but still there are things which are not clear to us. I don't promise that this video will make everything clear, but I hope that some of the ideas will make you better understand what we are dealing with. For those who don't know, in astrology we have each sign which is assigned to the house. So for example, if you have a Gemini in the first house, the second one will be the Cancer. The second point is that each sign is loaded by the planet. For instance, the Cancer is loaded by the moon. And that automatically means that whichever sign is in that house, the moon will also rule that house. And on the basis of that, we create all kinds of forecasts. For example, second is about wealth, seven is about the relationship. So the relationship may bring you wealth in many forms, depending on the yoga, which is in the seventh house. Now, if the Lord of house A is in the house B and house B is in the back in the house loaded by planet A, then we are talking about the exchange. These planets are swapping their houses. And many things follow that. This situation is called Parivartana. In this video, we'll be talking, are these planets really want to exchange? How we know they exchange their position? Is it really so important? Or maybe there is another perspective which will make everything more easy. Now, having the privilege of using the generational knowledge of this school, Shri Achyutananda Parampara, we are exposed to very big secret, which is quite counterintuitive. That means that those planets which are directly involved in Parivartana, they stay in the same position and everything else changes. For instance, if you have Moon in the first house in Aries and Mars in the fourth house in Cancer, let's say with Saturn, it is as if Moon is in the Cancer in the first house with the Saturn, because the Saturn now comes to the first house, and you have Mars in the fourth and in the Aries. So the signs and planets joined have changed their positions. The fact that this is counterintuitive causes us to receive it to this day, the questions about how the transfer really takes place. So you can imagine this as the planet directly involved in that Parivartana. They are like a tunnel through which everything else passes. And you have to understand that the mere exchange of these planets already guarantees the yoga. For example, among those placeholders, which we call yoga formation, the UT conjunction, the Drishti, the aspect, and the Parivartana, the latter is the strongest. If the Lord of the first house is in the ninth house, you may seeking the ninth house indication, the meaning, whatever it's there. But if the ninth Lord is having yoga with the first, then the situation rises when the desire has found its object. By contrast, we know that, for example, if you have relation like second to 12, then it can mean that, like we say, there was not the right time for the situation to occur. So there is some miss between what you are seeking and the situation, which is somewhere else. With Parivartana, it's not only as if they would be in the conjunction, but it's like if they are in conjunction, but simultaneously in these both houses at the same time. And now we can appreciate why the Shastras, the ancient texts about astrology, are reflecting about these positions when describing the Raja Yogas or Raja Sambandha Yogas. For example, we know that there are positions like First Lord in the fifth Lord in the first house, First Lord in the 10th and 10th Lord in the first house, one of the biggest Raja Sambandha Yogas in the chart. So these are precisely those Parivartana exchanges. We must also look at this from the other side. If, for example, Lord of Kendra is in the Dushtana, and that Lord of Dushtana is in the another bad house, another Dushtana, then the situation is much worse. Because the Lord of that house or dispositor is fulfilling the function of remedy when that planet in the house is going through some difficulty. If that Lord is again in the Dushtana, then it has no resources to help. For example, 10th Lord in 8 and 8th Lord in the 2nd, the situation is more problematic. This is why when the Parivartana touches the Dushtana, we call it the dainya, or it is the negative one, as it described in the Fal Deepika. For example, Lord of the 12th house in the first means that I will experience some karma related to losses or big investments, things like that. And if the first Lord would be well placed, then it means I have resources to cope. I can go to my friends, to my parents, I can go to the bank to take a loan, and I can use all of those chances, all of those good cards the fate has given me. But if the Lord is poorly placed, the situation is different. I don't have these resources, so it is creating much more problem. Of course, the help can come from other places. It could be aspect, the drishti. It could also come from the bhava, karaka, the significator of the house, by going to, escaping to those roots from the other planets, I can still get out of depression. But if 12th Lord is in the first and the Lagna Lord is in the 12th, then we are dealing with this negative Parivartana. It means that I don't have other relief. I'm going back to that problem. Then this negative hyper-focus could be a challenge here because I am so submerged in that problem. We have to understand that Parivartana means also shifting between these states from one to the other. If houses are positive, it just means jumping from one circumstance to the other. But if one is negative, then the negative one will all the time sabotage whatever the other house is doing. For example, in this chart, we have 9th and 11th Parivartana. That would be nice. Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra says it is a friendly relationship with the gurus. Your boss can be friendly, well-wisher, can give you a lot out of the way to help you. And here, the situation is different because for the movable sign, movable is Capricorn, the 11th house is the Badaka. And Badaka can be fine if it's only benefics, but here the Lord is Mars, Badakesha, in the 9th. The Saturn is malefic, but it's Lagna Lord also, so it's somewhat controllable. So we can see that the Mars is the Badakesha in the 9th. Therefore, this Parivartana, otherwise positive, in this case, may have some mixed connotations. So in this situation, the partner, because the 7th Lord is Moon, Uchanata is Venus in that yoga, and Venus is also the Karaka for the relationship, because of the 11th house, which can give big rise, this caused a problem. This caused debts then, which had to be repaid. This is how the 11th house may punish the person. And we can see that the Badakesha is that 9th house situation, which is like the effect is now coming as if falls from the sky, because that is the 9th house situation. The logic is coming from the past life. So because you cannot understand the cause, the etiology of that is somewhat hidden from you. So therefore you say this is like a bad luck, like misfortune, because you cannot trace those causes which may be coming from the past life. But then we have another shift. The person took a job in the fashion industry. So this Mercury and Venus are forming the remedy, and they are in the 11th house. So it's like going again from that Marshall problem. We are escaping the problem from the Mars in the 9th by holding to this opportunity given to us by Mercury and Venus. But then again, in that nice situation, the person got two negative challenges coming from that Mars, 4th Lord of properties. One was that the billing information, that the person is now suddenly heavily burdened by the bills, which need to be paid. And the second was that the tenant was wrongfully holding the security deposit, so it's not giving it back. And in the first situation about this, the billing thing, the person turned to a friend, right? 11th house, Venus and Mercury. And she borrowed the money from that person. So we can see also that person was Aquarius Lagna and Mercury and Venus having strong indication there. So we can see that this is the person. And in that second situation about that tenant holding that security deposits, we see also the help is coming, or the remedy is that Mercury and Venus in the 11th house, because the person turned to a community, to like an union, which is protecting those people in such situation. And we can see also the 6th Lord community is that same Mercury. So again, the problem is coming through Mars, and the remedy is by this Venus and Mercury. And what's interesting, it was not even in those dashas of the Parivartana. It is just so continuous battle which will stay there in the life if you have this yoga in the chart. So I'm very curious, if you have Parivartana, let me know in the comments and write me how this manifests for you and which houses it involves. I'm very curious to know. It would be nice to have those other examples of this Parivartana in the chart. Before we move on, I want to share that if you'd like me to help you with your chart, seeing what yogas are there and help you with making this career life, relationship and health more fulfilling by blocking the negatives and also finding the timing and the tips for those areas, then you can find the link in the description. And now let's go to the next step. So now we will have a second example of Rubin Carter, who was a middle weight boxer, and we will see how those shifts in the Parivartana was bringing this opposition in the trajectory of his life events. We see that we are dealing here in this chart with the Kala yogas. Kala Amrita, all planets are between the nodes. Ketu is in the beginning, so we have Kala Amrita yoga here. It's not the simple one because we have Jupiter in 7 breaking it, so that means that the person will also work in freeing others. And I want you to focus especially on the Parivartana in the Navamsha when the Rahu is in the sign of Saturn Aquarius and the Saturn is in the sign of Rahu Virgo. So we have Parivartana between 3rd and 10th in the Navamsha. Now this is interesting because the Navamsha is holding much heavier karma than Rashi, so this may be a big shifts or huge piles of karma. There is some big transformation which can lead to reversals of this fortune magazine or fortune resources, which are then giving rise to various manifestations in the Rashi chart. We know that this person was wrongfully convicted for 20 years, but before that, he was already in jail in the teenage years, but he came out of this bad situation by training boxing. And he was suddenly very successful in that. We immediately can see the Saturn and Mars in the 10th house. Like Muhammad Ali also had Saturn and Mars in 10th. Also, 2 of my friends who are into boxing, they also have Saturn Mars yoga in the chart. So we can see Jupiter Saturn person is getting out of the problem of Jupiter Rahu in the 3rd house. Now we are going to the central event. The person was wrongfully convinced for almost 20 years in Jupiter Venus. Now we see Jupiter Venus is in that yoga in the 3rd house. So that boxing thing is ending. We are shifting from one thing back to the 3rd house. And after 19 years, he's released in Saturn Moon. So again, coming from 3rd house to the 10th. Saturn's in the 10th, so this is the boxing yoga again, and the moon is in Kendra. So we have to wait for that Antardasha in the Mahadasha, which is making that function, which will support the Mahadasha. So moon being in the Kendra to this Mahadasha Lord Saturn is very strongly support the person, being also benefic in the Kendra will give the person the freedom. So here also we learn that because that Saturn and Mars, even when 2 malefics, when they are properly channelized, like here in the boxing, they are forming the remedy for whatever this Jupiter Rahu is giving in the 3rd house. And it's quite negative yoga because we have Jupiter and Rahu, which is Guru Chandala. This is manifesting some very heavy karma like homicide and very serious disease like cancer. So if there is Parivartana, you want to hold whatever the other house is promising in the chart, because that will be the remedy, the way out of the problem which is given by this negative house. And then later at the moment of departure, we have again Ketu Jupiter, and it was the Cancer Jupiter Rahu. So it is again coming back to that Marana, right, of the 3rd house, the Jupiter. It is also very interesting that all of the dasha, Graha dashas, Rashi dashas, and the other ones are all pointing out towards this Jupiter. Thus we can see how this trajectory of life is going from bad to good, from good to bad, how these shifts are happening, and also we can very easily, based on those 2 examples, trace or identify what was the remedy. So that rule works, right? If we stick to that good arm of that Parivartana, this is the going out of the problem. The next point is, how do we know that these planets are even inclined to change their positions? Does it depend, for example, on their nature or maybe on their speed? Would you, for example, swap rooms with your enemy or cars? Be afraid that they may damage something, they may steal, there may be some cheating involved. So if 2 planets are inimical to each other, they may delay the exchange. And similar things is if they are placed in the fixed signs. There are a few more techniques to that, but now I want to focus on the last point, which is the shifting the perspective. So the first stage when we analyze the chart is we are looking at the chart by the placements, but the more advanced step or way of seeing the chart is by looking at the chart from the culinary point of view as a recipes or yoga. That it really doesn't matter when the planet is, because for us what is important is there a yoga of this thing to that point? Then we are looking at the other level, and if there are few points which are getting this check mark, we are saying, yes, this recipe is there in the chart. For example, if you have moon in the first house, or if you have moon with the Lagna Lord, or something to be present in your life, which depends on that, it's not really big difference. There may be some nuances, like for example, the planet in the house is showing the attitude, and the planet in the seventh house may show something subconscious in us. So there will be some differences, but for the yoga, for something which is giving rise to an event, it will be very similar situation. Then there is more relevant question to ask, not where is the planet, but which house is now operating in that point of time. This principle is very important in context of treating Parivartana like an engine of the resources exchange process. Like for example, we have fourth lord and third lord Parivartana. It's like some buying of house, renovation, and the selling is happening, especially if the renovation or planets are involved, like Venus, Mercury, things like that. For sales, maybe Libra. Similarly, if you have Parivartana 7 and 6, then there is some continuous process going on. So then these planets are moving there constantly. It's maybe every day the planet is changing the position. So now it is more important which house in that whole process is working. So then it is not where are the planets, but which house is now activated. And for this, we have shown the example before. Maybe because of that, when my teacher was asked that question, he answered, treat as if the planet were in both of these places. And the final point, even if the situation is less dynamic and it has impact on some static things like the, for example, gender of our kids, then still we can ask the person about the activities of those houses, and then we can get the information what is exactly the stage of that Parivartana. And that is also why there are so many shlokas on the siblings and Aruda. It's not to predict how many siblings you have, because no one ever would ask that question to astrologers, how many siblings I have. It never happened, because we already know that in most of the cases. And this is to reverse engineer. By knowing how many siblings you have, you can find the working Aruda in your chart. Similarly here, by understanding what the client is going through, you can understand at what stage the Parivartana is there in the chart. This is also why we have those first 30 minutes in the reading. It's not only to rectify the chart, but also to understand things like that. Where is the Aruda? Where is the Jatakaraha? What role those planets really play in the chart? Which are the well-wishers? How you get out of the problems in the past? If we can assign those roles to those plans, then we can then more easily predict what will happen in the future. All right, so that is all for today. I hope you find this interesting and informative. I hope you got some nuggets. Let me know in the comments if there were some new points to you, or you already knew everything. I would be eager to know. And please don't forget to thumbs up. It really helps to make this video more present on that platform. It really helps me, so thank you for that. And subscribe for more videos like this. And if you'd like to see similar one, then please consider watching this one.